Okay, that actually wasn't one of the most heated parts. At one point, the chair threatened to end the whole committee as a result of the back and forth that was going on. Zoom, as I mentioned, making it even more complicated, of course. Let's bring in our strategists, though. They've been following this. They've been listening in. Conservative strategist Jenni Byrne is joining us. We've also got CTV political commentator Tom Mulcair, previously of the NDP, joining us. And in Edmonton, we've got Liberal strategist Jacqueline Biollo. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Jenni. Your read on what we saw. I know it was 4 hours, but your big takeaway.
Well, I think the takeaway on this is we're really no further ahead in terms of answers on this whole relationship between the we and the Kielbergers and the government. And in fact, in certain places, the Kielbergers contradicted what public servants like Rachel Wernick said in terms of timing. So I think that it's all very unusual because as you said earlier, and Charlie Angus went after the Kielbergers on this, is we're talking about a $1 billion program and an admitted phone call after phone call with members of this government, and there is not one person registered to lobby for the we organization. And so I think there were about 30 or 40 times the Kielbergers who should have had things at the tip of their fingers coming in prepared for this committee just did not have ready.
Yeah, Tom, your read. What do you think?
Well, it's 4 hours of testimony that does, Todd, make it hard to separate the we from the chaff. The thing that struck me the most was right at the beginning. Michelle Douglas said, look, the wheels were falling off this thing in terms of governance. On the 23rd of March, I said that it just couldn't continue like this. On the 27th of March, phone calls from the Kielbergers. I was fired. She's highly credible, super respected. She was fired because she was asking questions about how the thing was being run. What's amazing to me is if the government tries to stick to their story, which is, hey, we had this sole source, no competition, contract, because that's what it is. It's a contract. They can have administrative and bureaucratic terms for it. It's a sole source contract. To move $900 million of taxpayers' money, pay up to $43 million in fees to something where there's a deep problem of governance. The board of directors was resigning en masse, and somehow nobody in the whole government of Canada did any due diligence as to whether or not that sole source contract made any sense. That's the thing that sticks with me the most.
Jacqueline, what do you think?
Well, I think one of the things that stands out for me is that, unfortunately, we have now been pushed aside one of the top priorities of the whole initiative, which was to give youth employment opportunities, volunteerism. And we heard that in the testimony right at the end saying, you know, what has been amiss? So although politicians or individuals, organizations need to be held to a higher standard and hence the questioning, but what stood out for me was certainly that large organizations working collaboratively with the government is something that happens on a regular basis. And hopefully initiatives are being put forth for the betterment of all Canadians.
Oh, let me go back to you, Jenni, and ask you the following, sort of how the Kielbergers themselves came across.
I think they came across. I think they came across horribly, and I've spoken and had notes from friends that I have in other political parties. I don't think this is a partisan thing. I think they came across as very shifty, very evasive. There were times they were doing very much long speeches, and I know that the segue into this was an exchange between Wayne Easter and Pierre Poilievre. But the issue is that Wayne Easter, if he had been chairing the committee the way a committee should be chaired, MPs like Pierre would not have gotten frustrated because he allowed long rambling answers. And you saw at the very end, in fact, Pierre asked a question that was a very simple yes or no question, and they went completely in the other way. And of course, Wayne Easter didn't push them back. So I think the Kielbergers cleared nothing up. I think there's still so many questions about the first set of numbers coming out for being 19 million to administer this to 20 to 43 billion from 500 million to 900 million. There's so many questions here about how this program came to be. There is no chance that we have seen the last of the Kielbergers.
Tom, what do you think of their performance?
I quite agree with Jenny on that one. I think that the Kielbergers, with that last answer, they seemed to know that they were getting to the finish line, couldn't help but being clever. Sometimes you can be too clever by half. That exchange where Poilievre, which was super clear, yes or no, did you hire private detectives through your law firm to check on these people? No answer, reference to Twitter exchanges. That was a big mistake. They had done quite well. I mean, they were super briefed. I'm a lawyer. I've been at this for over 40 years. I can tell you, Todd, they were well briefed. Some of their answers were not just clever, they were borderline crafty. For example, did the Prime Minister's mother get paid for the speech on the stage on July 2nd, 2017, Canada Day, 150th celebration? Answer, pretty close to this. Well, I have no knowledge of a specific contract for giving that speech. But what you have to understand is we weren't just paying people for speeches. We were going through a speaking bureau, but they were also doing other things like attending breakfasts and doing fundraising for us. So it's really hard to see into that what was actually being paid. One of the surprises was that the numbers given out so far were not complete. We're learning that there were possibly hundreds of thousands of further dollars not yet accounted for, and they wouldn't even give the number. They had it right in front of their eyes. They said, well, on average, so much per appearance. They wouldn't give the straight up numbers. They'll have to give them at some point, so I don't see what purpose that served. But all that being said, in terms of expenses on top of the hundreds of thousands of salaries to Mrs. Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's mom, to his wife and to his brother, that's just going to all come back. It's going to be there on Thursday. Mr. Trudeau's very good at this stuff. I have no doubt that Katie Telford is going to be just as well briefed and prepared as the Kielbergers. I don't know if we're going to get a lot out of that testimony on Thursday, but that's the key issue. This is government responsibility. Two things in play. One is the close proximity of the Liberals, Mr. Trudeau, his family, to the Kielbergers. That's an obvious problem. I think that Bill Morneau is still going to have to pay a heavy price on that, by the way. I don't see how he can survive. And of course, the second one is how in heaven's name did the government of Canada decide that it was a good idea to move hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to this group and to pay them over $40 million when the wheels were falling off in terms of their governance and their administration, and their board chair has just resigned.
Jacqueline, what's your read on what we heard from the Kielbergers? Did we get enough answers? Because certainly the NDP and Conservatives saying no.
Well, I think it was certainly mentioned that even in the environment that the hearing is being conducted. So over Zoom, whether it's personalities or just the dynamics of the room, the questioning, that presents a unique challenge all in itself. I myself feel that when you're an executive, just even so the Prime Minister, you're being advised by others to assist you in decision making. So although some of the criticism may be that their answers seemed somewhat rehearsed, you have a team. We have, executives and board of directors that assist in all of the decision making. So over a 4-hour period, I think that it becomes important not only for the consistency of message, of which they offer to continue to respond to and provide supporting documentation. So I feel that it was positive, progressive, that if and when more questions arise, that they will be responded to accordingly.
And it keeps coming back, Jenny, to the same thing, doesn't it? Whether we got preferential treatment because of their connections and whether that's a clear violation of the Conflict of Interest Act or whether that happened and all those ties that bind. Your take on whether we are any closer to being able to say that definitively and what you think we might be hearing from Justin Trudeau on Thursday.
Well, I agree with Tom that Trudeau is going to be very good at this, and he is going to try to skate into a narrative that this is all about the children and it's all about the program, and it's not. It is about, the facts are that we, a charity with very large corporate and real estate interests as well, paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in speaking fees and expenses to Justin Trudeau's family, had the finance minister's daughter on payroll, and they received a sole source program, $1 billion program to deliver, and that there is nothing normal in the course of government that would has ever happened before.
What about that cloud, Tom? The idea of, the connections, and clearly there were. I mean, Margaret Trudeau was paid for speaking engagements. So was Alexandre Sacha Trudeau. Sophie Gregoire Trudeau did a lot of volunteer work as well. Morneau's family are going on international trips, which he just paid back some of the travel expenses recently.
One of the key elements to come out of today's testimony early on from the Kielbergers, and it was interesting, and it was virtually unsolicited, but They explained that Margaret Trudeau only started getting paid after Mr. Trudeau became Prime Minister. So Mr. Trudeau was elected in October of 2015, and from their testimony today, she started getting paid as of November 2015. It's really hard not to draw a straight line between those two dates.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Jacqueline? The idea that they did say that. They said, you know, we started to pay her after Justin Trudeau was elected Prime Minister.
Well, though the timing of it may be unfortunate, I think the reality is that many organizations, many individuals not only enter into relationships where they might draw a crowd for the purposes of fund development. So many opportunities, there are paid speakers. So we think that and when you break down sort of the monetary incentives that were provided, they are minimal or at least in line with a lot of other organizations that would pay for keynote speakers.
Damage done, do you think, Jenny, damage done to the We organization here? Because you heard that from both the brothers, how sad and angry and upset they were and frustrated over all this.
Well, I think what they're sad and angry about is the fact that major sponsors like RBC announced today, as well as TELUS before and Virgin and Good Life, that they're all working with We when it's become clear that they're a charity that doesn't do a lot of delivery, but does a lot of self-promotion and paying speakers fees. So I think this isn't going away for the Kielbergers and We, and I think that they are now the Liberal government and they are combined together, because the more the onion is peeled back to the Kielbergers' business dealings, the more the shine off this program and the government's defense that this was all about the kids actually is going to stick.
Just quickly, Tom, your last thoughts?
You know, Todd, it's July. People are supposed to only be thinking about the dock and hanging out. Right now, people are really paying attention to this. Polling numbers from earlier in the week showing that more than half of Canadians have a less positive view of Mr. Trudeau since this event started. Of course, he's going to try with a big operation to put a lot of toothpaste back into the tube on Thursday, but I believe that the Kielbergers will be back before the committee. There's no way for the Liberals to block that finally, and I think there's still a lot more to come out.
Jacqueline, last word to you.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate reality is that perhaps we will have to continue to do stakeholder engagement to rebuild their reputation and or solidify the good work that they've been doing for over 25 years. When we move over to the government, though, and it's true that right now people are more focused or should be focused. There's a long weekend coming up. There are other priorities, back to school, the coronavirus. But if people become involved in politics because they are holding their elected officials or the government accountable, then I actually think that that's a good thing.
Wonderful to have all three of you with us here to help quarterback our coverage of this 4 hours of testimony. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hey, Todd.
Jenni Byrne, Tom Mulcair joining us from both Montreal and Toronto, as well as Liberal strategist Jacqueline Biollo in Edmonton. Okay, quick break for us here on